Okay, now is the time for the next session. As I told you, this will be about the life of an IPS officer. So for this session, I would like to invite on stage Shri Asim Arun sir.
Hello, good morning, Himanshu.
Good morning, sir. Welcome to the session, sir.
Thank you.
So let me take the honor of introducing Shri Asim Arun sir first. Sir is an IPS officer of the 1994 batch and an alumnus of University of British Columbia. He is currently working as the first police commissioner of Kanpur city. Shri Asim Arun sir is a decorated officer and a recipient of UN Peacekeeping Medal. He had played a major role in the formation of the first SWAT team of the country, which is in Aligarh. And beside also, he played a role in setting up a special police operations team in UP for high-risk operation. He had also worked in the UN Police Service in a peacekeeping mission in Kosovo. He has also played a major role in the success of 112 helpline number in Uttar Pradesh. During his tenure as the chief UP ATS, he arrested several modules of terrorists, spies, Naxals, and criminals. He also led the police encounter in Lucknow, in which a terrorist Saifullah died on March 8, 2017. A fearless officer, he is also the recipient of the President Medal for Gallantry for a counter-terror operations in Lucknow, alongside a President's Police Medal for Distinguished Service and Police Medal for Meritorious Service. Asim sir, I welcome you to the session and look forward to a wonderful time ahead.
Thank you very much, Himanshu. Thank you for providing me this honor and the opportunity to talk to young minds like yourself and your students.
Most welcome, sir. So, I would like to start with we wanted to know, how did you come to join the IPS? Was it a conscious decision, or it just happened? How it?
It was a very conscious decision. When I was just about to complete my graduation from St. Stephen's College, Delhi, I happened to be lucky and I got a job in the media, and I worked in television media for 1 year. But having spent about 11 or 12 months there, I did a detailed analysis about my capabilities, my opportunities, and whether I wanted to pursue a career in media as first choice or not. And I felt that I should take a shot at the civil service exam, which was my higher priority. And my backup plan would be a career in media. So I wrote the exam, and I was lucky to get selected in my second attempt at the age of 23. To answer your question directly, Indian Police Service was my first choice, and it was a conscious decision because I felt that I had everything that it takes to be a good police officer, and I would always be doing something which is close to my heart, and at the same time getting paid for it. So it was a conscious decision, and it really helped me in the selection process as well.
Yes, sir. That also reflect the passion that you have for the police services role. I have seen your work closely, and it's tremendous what you have achieved. So the next question is, so fearlessness and courage are the two key attributes that comes to our mind when we think of an IPS officer. So all of us here, especially the young IPS aspirants who have joined in here, would love to hear your experiences during these years as an IPS officer. Was it it's like what are the challenges when you are an IPS officer? Is it different from any other civil servant?
Quite a lot of challenges would remain the same, but I would like to talk about only the challenges which are, in my opinion, unique to an IPS officer. Now, police is the agency which is responsible for implementing the law. To use an international term, we are a law enforcement agency. Secondly, we should very strongly believe in the rule of law and not the rule of an individual. Practically, this means that if my boss or a politician or a politically elected representative in a constitutional position is asking me to do something which is not as per law, I should have the strength and the courage and systematic approach to say no to counter that with arguments and also convince that boss that what you're asking me to do is not as per law. So, rule of law is something which is really supreme to a democracy. Whereas in a autocracy, in a monarchy, rule of an individual is what prevails. Whatever the Raja says is the law and we implement it. So this is where a big difference applies. And in the police, whether it's IPS or whether it's a constable, this is something which we have to cherish. But this is also a challenge which we have to face every day because in our society, a lot of elected representatives believe that it is a rule of an individual, that what they have desired must be fulfilled. But this is how a democracy matures. Our democracy is also maturing very quickly, particularly due to a camera in everyone's hand, a very strong media, new media called social media. So now this challenge has become more or less easier because everyone understands that they are answerable to the law.
True, sir. True, sir. So, sir, right now the pandemic is going on. The corona situation is going on, and it changes everything. Every job, every profile. So the police, along with the healthcare services, have been at the forefront while dealing with the corona crisis, and the nature and scale of this crisis is completely unprecedented. So, what are the
Right.
challenges that you, as an IPS officer, faced, in these times, and how you overcame them?
I would like to answer this question in two parts: Corona first wave and second wave, because I was in two different positions. When Corona first wave happened, I was additional DG of 112 services, which is the emergency service of UP. Primarily, it runs a fleet of 4,500 police response vehicles, PRVs, as we call them. But it also handles calls for ambulances. We don't run the ambulance fleet, but we do a large chunk of their call taking. We also do the call taking for fire services, but we don't do the fleet management for them. So it's a massive organization, works across UP, and I can say very proudly that UP Police 112 is able to respond to any kind of event within 12 to 13 minutes across the state. That's a very massive state capacity. No other state has this capacity of responding with a SUV 3 of well equipped to any point in the state. Now, when Corona phase 1 happened, it was a complete lockdown, and we realized that we were not doing anything, virtually sitting idle in our police cars because there was no crime, there was no traffic, there was no nothing. So at that time, Honorable CM Shri Yogi Adityanath asked us on the, I think, third or fourth day of the lockdown that he felt a lot of people were going without food or without medicines, or people who were simply too old to fend for themselves in the lockdown situation. So he said, is it possible that we invite calls on 112 and the police response vehicle responds to that situation? We did a quick assessment and we realized that yes, we had plenty of spare capacity at that time. And then publicity campaign followed, and suddenly we had a massive surge of calls to 112. People asking for food, shelter, medicines, and a number of other things. So overnight, the police vehicles had to transform their role, adapt to the new situation. And I'm proud to say that the entire force responded very well. Um, it was also an opportunity for the police to reinvent its identity. And we always cherish that the police should be regarded as an agency which helps and not just as an agency which punishes. So, police as a help agency evolved quite a bit in phase 1. Second wave was, as we know, far tougher, and I was in a new responsibility as police commissioner of Kanpur. Now, this is a smaller jurisdiction, but here one is responsible for virtually everything that relates to the police. But again, during this time, it was not called lockdown; it was called a partial Corona curfew because there was not a strict lockdown. A lot of things were working. But since the disease itself was far more serious, there were many shortages, and now again the police had to reinvent itself, reform its role And I am very proud to say that two of my officers, Dr. Manoj Kumar and Dr. Anil Kumar, who are both MBBS doctors. First is a DIG, who was a DIG at the time, and now the second one is additional DCP. They, in their khaki uniform, became doctors. First, they very quickly strengthened the 16-bedded police hospital in the police lines, made it available to police and family members, got oxygen supply installed there, and we were able to handle a pretty large number of police cases there. And the serious ones were, of course, referred to a high facility. We also then realized there were shortages of oxygen cylinders. People were black marketing cylinders. And uh, in those times, we were actually recovering cylinders as well from black marketers. So we thought, why not set up our own oxygen cylinder bank, which we did, and make free oxygen cylinders available to anyone who needed it. And even now, we have about 230 odd cylinders in our cylinder bank, all repaired, freshly painted, and ready to go if required. So, just to cite two examples, but we've had to reinvent ourselves. Coordination role was very important. Number of times the police were actually doing the cremations in the absence of parents, children, or wards. So both the phases have been very challenging. For the first phase, I responded, my organization responded as a state-wide organization. For the second one, it is a city organization called Kanpur Police Commissionerate. So both have been very varied experiences, but I would say largely satisfying as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. I can understand, the extreme challenges that this corona came in, but I must say that the 112 number is actually it's working tremendously. I myself have used it twice during corona crisis, and at once it was like within 10 minutes they came in. So that is something really done wonders for UP, for the police services for sure, for the normal public. So the next question. So as an IPS officer, on one hand, you have to work towards maintaining the strictness, law and order, and keeping the indiscipline and crime in check. On the other hand, as you told, the police have to be compassionate also towards the public at large to. Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. There is a little connection issue. So
No
I'll
issues.
just ask my question again. So, sir, as an IPS officer, on one hand, you have to work towards maintaining the strictness for law and order, keeping the indisciplined crime in check, and on the second hand, you have to be compassionate. Public at large should feel accessible, approachable to the police service. So, how do these two polars, opposites, go hand in hand? How do you manage that?
That's a very important question. I like to repeat one strategic objective of the police. Now, figuratively speaking, if you ask the child what in UP, what does the police do? Most typically, the answer would be the police beats up people, the police sends people to jail, the police. That's what the answer. I'm sure most people, including probably Himanshu, you would give. Of course, you're not a small child anymore. So we want to change that. The answer should be the police helps everyone, and that's a big dream. It will take time, but it will require a very concerted effort to achieve that. And as I discussed, the two waves of corona were a time where police as a help agency evolved itself substantially. But on the other hand, we have to do the law enforcement as well, and do the law enforcement with an iron hand, as you like, which means zero tolerance. We don't allow, we should not allow any kind of interference of any kind. We should not allow any kind of corruption, any monetary illegal incentives to apply to ourselves. So yes, it is a challenge, but I guess there's no dichotomy in this. When we are dealing with a situation when one person is a victim and the other is a criminal, a perpetrator of a crime, let's say a rape victim and a rape criminal. So there should be no confusion that we deal with both the persons in the same kind of manner. No, we understand anyone would. I mean, if you were dealing with such a situation, Himanshu, you would know how to deal with two different sets of people. So most people are able to do that, but we need to train our people ourselves more in ethics, human behavior, victimology, and that has begun to happen. Uh, Quite a lot of change has happened because of the social media, because there is very high level of answerability. Even a constable remotely in some village knows that if somebody picks up a camera and in a moment this would go viral. So all of us are being extremely careful. But this is a negative impulse on us. But we need to create positive impulses as well. And then we have to be tough in dealing with the criminals, which also should not mean tough as in violating human rights, or doing other shortcuts, illegal methods. No, we have to be very fair and legal in dealing with the criminals, and very compassionate and fair when dealing with the victims or ordinary citizens. For that.
True, sir, and that is extremely required, in a truest sense. If the police, the image of police changes for good, I believe, it will be extremely valuable for the whole ecosystem.
Yes. In fact, not just
Also,
the
sir,
image of the police. Our image is quite close to what we are. If I am not fit, and if I try to choose something on live stream which makes me look slimmer, that doesn't help. So more important than image is improving ourselves, and that is happening. I see that happening in a number of sectors, and I'm sure we'll make quick progress in future.
for sure, sir. Uh, okay, sir. So from your introduction, I can see yours indeed is an inspiring story. You have achieved so much. But I would like now to take you a little back in time. When you were preparing for the civil service examination. So what was the experience like, and what actually motivated you to join civil services at first hand? What
Right.
exactly was the trigger?
Two things. One, my father was also an IPS officer, so I had seen the police all my life. So I knew closely what it was, what were the merits and what were the demerits. But that's an external influence. Internal influence was stronger. As I said, because right after college I got a break into the media, and I actually worked for a year, and I was enjoying it, and I felt that I will be able to earn my living out of this. But when I did a SWOT analysis of my own situation, I realized that I had virtually everything that a good police officer needs. But most importantly, thirdly, for the youngsters who are listening to us, I believe most people, particularly boys, enjoy police. Why? Because we deal with all our childhood toys. We have fastest of cars, we have weapons, we have communication devices. So, and that's what we have played with as young boys. And I guess young boys like speed, they like power, and when you get into the police for all your life, you continue to play with these not toys, the real stuff now. So at a at a very emotional level, maybe at a philosophical level, life in police is very enjoyable because it's like a game which you enjoy all along.
That's you have put it into so easy words. I understand. I have been a police officer since, so I understand how tough the life and the job is. But it's indeed a pleasure to listen. Sir, just continuing with that civil service preparation part only. So, according to you, what are the key attributes, beside that knowledge or syllabus-focused preparation, what are the key attributes that ensures that selection happens for a civil service examination? What one should possess, other than obviously learning the syllabus and doing the studies?
Right. Right. Himanshu, that's a tough question for me to answer. And while I answer, I must also, you know, make you remember that I wrote the exam 28 years ago. So the
Yes.
exam itself has changed quite a bit. So, and I'm sure you don't expect me to answer, write in paper one and what one should write in paper two. But I have a sense that this exam tests primarily one thing: your ability to put information in perspective and present it in easy to understand form. And I realize that that's what we do most of the time. Let me give you a small example. I am Commissioner of Police Kanpur, and I have 11 young officers working with me. So we are dealing with, let's say, begging on the streets. We are trying to eliminate this problem, particularly of young children knocking at cars at red lights. We are trying to end this problem. So I have put an additional DCP on the job. So what does he have to do? He has to first read the law, what applies here. He has to find out who are the NGOs who are working in this area and bring them on board. And then write our own paper that this is our policy, this is how we'll handle it, and these are the legal steps which we will follow. So this is what you're doing after the exam. And what is the exam test? Before the exam, that you are giving a subject, you have to study it before the exam, which means you have information, lots of information, so that you can place things in perspective. And finally, to your boss or to elected representative in a constitutional authority, present it in a simple to understand form so that the decision maker can choose. These are the three options, pros and cons. This is what I recommend. But yes, boss, you choose which one you want to choose, and then I will implement it wholeheartedly. So fundamentally, the exam tests this, and that's what we have to deliver. Now, there's a flaw in the exam that it tries to do this for so many services using the same set of information. Personally, I believe that this exam needs to be broken into 5 or 6 parts. For example, for the police, you need a very definite set of skills and attitudes, which this exam doesn't test. So this exam selects officers to police service, to railway traffic, which is such a specialist business, and also to audited accounts. Now, all three, and a diplomat also, all of them chosen through one exam. Personally, I am a great critic of this system, and it needs to reinvent itself. But whichever service you choose, whichever direction you're choosing, primarily look at everything in terms of acquiring information, but also putting it to use in a particular context. And that's what I think mostly this exam does.
So, sir, continuing with this only what you said. So, as an aspirant, how should I decide that I'm made for IPS or let's say IAS? So, focusing especially on IPS, how do I get to know that I'll work into, so with my qualities, what should I possess as an IPS officer to become a successful IPS officer? So that's something, that is confusing to almost most of the aspirants.
I think I already answered that question, Himanshu. If, as a youngster, as a boy or a girl, as a kid, you enjoyed guns, you enjoyed cars, you enjoyed a bit of punching each other also. So that means that you are inherently cut out from the top. Right. So, but more specifically speaking, for a 20-25-year-old, I would say that you are cut out to be an IPS officer if you have interest in law, you understand technology, and you like to apply technology to processes. You are able to handle risky situations, and you have a temperament that if you see a crowd running away coming towards you, so your instinct is not to start the crowd and run away. If your instinct is to go right where the problem is, why are they running? So you want to tear through the crowd and see what is happening there, and then take things in your hand, resolve them. So most common tactic would be to run away. But if your sense believes, that let me get down, let me see what the problem is, and let me see what contribution I can make. And because that's what, as a cop, you are expected to do all the time. Rush to problems, solve the problems. Of course, problem solving is something which all government officers will do. But as a police agency, we are always dealing with emergency problems. And we can say no to virtually nothing. Half of the things which come to the police don't belong to the police. I mean, people would fight over garbage being spilled. People would fight over illegal construction, in flats or in the village. No, these things don't belong to the police, but police would always respond. Sometimes by counseling both the parties that please go to the civil court or please go to the tehsil for this. But we always problem solving, responding to emergency situations.
Great, sir. Sir, one of the student is asking कि IPS officers का जो physical examination होता है, so वो कुछ बहुत different या tough होता है, and उनकी training कैसे different होती है बाकी civil servants के मुकाबले?
Right. Unfortunately, IPS के लिए कोई physical performance test नहीं होता है. एक medical examination केवल होता है जो सभी सर्विसेज के लिए बराबर है. और हाँ, ये जरूर है, मैं बहुत एक्यूरेट मुझे जानकारी नहीं है, बट कई सर्विसेज में कुछ माइनर डिसेबिलिटीज, दिव्यांग अलाउड है, बट आईपीएस में ऐसा अलाउड नहीं है फॉर ऑब्वियस रीजंस. जो आईपीएस की ट्रेनिंग है वो फिजिकली डिमांडिंग है. आई वुड नॉट से कि बहुत टफ है, और बहुत ग्रेजुअल है, क्योंकि बहुत से बच्चे ऐसे पहुंचते हैं जो अच्छे फिटनेस के होते हैं, मैराथन रनर्स हैं, बॉक्सर्स हैं, वो इत्तेफाक से पहुंच जाते हैं, इसलिए नहीं क्योंकि उनका टेस्ट लिया गया और उनको बहुत आसान पड़ती है वो ट्रेनिंग. स्पोर्ट्समैन भी आ जाते हैं बहुत अच्छे, पर बहुत से बच्चे ऐसे होते हैं जिन्होंने कभी कोई गेम नहीं खोला है, कभी वो दौड़े नहीं हैं. So such children do have a problem, but the academy has a very gradual approach, and they would teach people slowly, allow them to develop their physical strength, give them enough time to rest so that muscles grow. But for someone who has never ever played a game, never ran for 100 meters, and there are people who do get into IPS, they have a tough time.
So do you believe that there should be some physical examination for the kind of job it is? Do you believe there should be some kind of changes, and at least for an IPS officer there should be some physical examination criteria?
Absolutely, I believe there should be a separate exam. I mean, let's say 100 meter, one should be able to run in 16 seconds. Let's say one should be able to do 4 or 5 chin-ups. Something as simple as that must apply, because that would make the job of the training academy much easier. And we would also get candidates into IPS who are more serious about IPS, not just because their second choice or third choice was IPS, but they were seriously looking at becoming cops, and they would come. But that's my opinion, which would hardly
Obviously
at this stage.
As I said, there is one, I would say a little controversial kind of a question. You can choose if you wanted to answer it or not. So one student is asking, civil service aspirant toils very hard. He works very hard to, crack this examination, and then finally cracks it, and he joins the services, let's say IPS service. And finally, he may have to take orders from someone who is sometimes uneducated, sometimes when he is a minister or something. So how does it, how do you tackle that situation? Is it a challenge, kind of a challenge sometimes? And is it a pressurable thing? How does it happen? If you wanted to.
Before I answer that, let me describe a situation which I used to face. I continue to, but my attitudes have changed now. When I was very young, assistant superintendent of police, freshly out of college, predominantly English-speaking background. So as ASP of Meerut, I would be dealing with media person, let's say, who would walk into my office, "Bhai sahab kaise hain? Paan khate hue aa rahe hain." And I would feel that, I mean, what kind of a job I am in. Why am I forced to deal with such a person who's, almost uneducated? He's chewing pan and doesn't even know that he should address me as sir. But very soon I realized that this was because of my elitism. And when I shed my elitism, things became clearer. So now, as a IPS officer or as any government officer, on the other side of the exam, we are not here to boss over people. We are not here to, because we have achieved a high social position and now we are supposed to enjoy that. No, no, no. That's not the truth at all. The truth is that we have been recruited to work in a system, and we are one cog in the system. We are a very important cog, and this cog has power in it. We actually make things move. But the media is there, the politicians are there. Some politicians would be far more educated than you and I, and some might not have been so fortunate. But they have come through a far more difficult exam. Their exam they face every 5 years, if not earlier, and their risks are far greater than the risks which we face. And I've also realized that no matter how bad a politician might be, they are usually far more responsive to the citizen than any government officer would be. So we have to work together in a system. Our democracy or our political executive may have flaws. The police has its flaws. The magistrates have their flaws. But with all our flaws, we have to reform ourselves and cooperate with other systems, the wheels of the system. So when these things come in perspective, then we begin to approach each other in a better way. And it's also not just about the targets to be achieved, it's also about relationships. When we build mutual respectful relationships with, let's say, politicians, press, other departments, then things become much easier. And if we have a totally task-oriented approach and a very cut and dry approach, then some people may cooperate and some people would not cooperate simply because they don't like your attitude, that it's too cut and dry and you are too elitist. It shows from your body language that you feel that you are several notches above me in social position, and hence I choose not to cooperate with you. So a lot of very bright officers might not succeed sufficiently because they did not shed their elitism, or sadly they acquired elitism after getting into a service like this.
Great, sir. So there's one more, question from the audience. So they were asking, how does the relationship between an IPS and IS officer in the same city works? Like, how is it like working, together? Because you cannot work, without each other if you are in a city. They both are cog in a wheel. So how does it happen?
There are two kinds of systems which we have. One is a system in which you have a district magistrate and a senior superintendent of police, the DMSP arrangement, and the other is a police commissionerate arrangement, which I had in Kanpur. So it's a very long answer to give, but I'll try and be brief and give you the crux of the issue. Now, in a district magistrate-led system, the DM is head of the criminal justice administration, and the SP is head of the police force. That's very confusing. So to answer that more directly, it means that the district magistrate heads not just the police setup, but he also heads the prosecution, the jail, and other correctional agencies. And also, pre-1973 CRPC, the DM also had a role in some court work as well. In a commissionerate system, the powers related to law and order come almost entirely to the police. Now, practically, this means that if there's a law and order issue and the police or the government wants to impose curfew under section 144 CRPC, so now the DM doesn't do it, the police commissioner or the assistant additional commissioner of police, they would issue an order under section 144. If somebody has to be arrested under the section 151 CRPC, which is preventive arrest, now this is again done by the police and then presented to a assistant commissioner of police, a DSP rank officer, and we actually have a police code where the person is presented, and the police is able to now has power to send this person to jail for up to 14 days. Now, without an FIR, just as a preventive arrest, not as a punishment, but as a prevention. So that's how the two systems work. In both the cases, to answer your question very directly, the magistrates and the police have to work very closely with a lot of trust, work hand in hand to be successful in their own domains and the collective domain. Let me give you a very specific answer. Now, 21st of July, we will be celebrating Bakrid all over the state and the country. Now, this is a peculiar kind of Bakrid. We have COVID rules saying that not more than 50 people can gather in a mosque or a temple. At the same time, we have challenges that people would, do animal sacrifices. So we have to coordinate with the Nagar Nigam, which is headed by an IS officer. The coordination has to be done with district magistrate, with another IS officer, the Kanpur Electricity Supply Corporation, another officer, IS officer heads it. So all of us have to be very proactive, non-elitist, not going out to prove that this service is better, that service is better. Going out to prove that citizens need our services. We have been posted here to deliver those services, and we will deliver them.
Okay. Sir, so according to you, if I may ask, which system do you feel is better? The commissionerate system, because you have worked into both.
Right.
So what do you feel? Which system is better? Out of it, if
there are different. Right. There are two different situations for the two systems. Now, the district magistrate and the SP system we found is better suited for rural or small city kind of a setup. And the police commissioner system is better suited for larger cities, metropolitan areas, as the CRPC describes it. Now, Section 8 CRPC provides for metropolitan policing in cities with more than 10 lakh population. So the CRPC itself defines where metropolitan policing should apply. And I completely agree. I mean, I'm too small a guy to say that I agree with CRPC, but that's what the CRPC says, and that's perfect.
Okay. Sir, last but not the least, one last question. So your last word of encouragement for UPSC aspirant who are present today. So what anything that you would like to say to make them motivated for the services?
Right. This exam is certainly a tough exam. Tough in the sense it requires a lot of hard work. You need extensive knowledge as well as intensive knowledge in so many domains. So you need to put in all the hours you can. And when you're preparing, I guess most of us, that's how we did. All you do is study, eat, sleep, and get some good physical exercise for at least 1 hour. So be prepared to do this for at least 2 attempts. I don't have a statistic, but generally I've heard that second attempt is usually the model attempt. Most people make it in second attempt because this exam also requires or you grow with experience. So work hard, but also have a plan B ready. Work hard for that as well, and that plan B should coincide with your preparations for the civil service exam. There are a lot of career options which you build along with the same kind of preparation. So keep your morale high and work hard. I guess that's all this exam test you are going to do work.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for being so candid and honest, in answering some of the questions which are a little controversial side. It's been a pleasure hosting you, and we would look forward, for some more few sessions, in the future. Thank you so much from all of us from Career Launcher and from all the aspirants who have been attending the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Himanshu. Thank you for hosting me. It's a great privilege to interact with you and through you, the youngsters. On a future occasion, if we can actually have people face to face, it would be still nicer in a classroom, in a physical situation. So with the hope that that situation will come back to us soon, and you will invite me actually to a classroom where we will have a discussion. Thank you so much.
Sure, sir. Hope the situation get better by the time, and so it's always good to have a face-to-face interaction than this when you are actually facing the audience and you're getting their responses in terms of different gestures. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
And now I would like to invite